Welcome to this video. In this tutorial, we will answer the following questions. So, the question reads, in the figure 2.1, which is just this figure by the side, find the direction and magnitude of A, the vector sum of A plus B, B, the vector difference of A minus B, and C, the vector difference of B minus A. Right, so how do we find those questions? We will start with A. So A states that we should find the vector sum of A plus B. So how are we going to get that? So remember that when you are dealing with vectors, one important thing that you always must remember is that we have to consider the components of that vector, especially when it comes to vector addition and vector differences. We must always consider what the components. So we must consider the x and y components of each and every vector there of A and B. So when adding vectors, we add component wise. So meaning that I must add the x component of the vector A, x component of the vector A to the B to the x component of the vector B. So I must find those first. How will I do that? So when I look at vector A here, so my vector A here is 30 meters. My vector A is 30 meters, and I have been given this angle here 25. So what do I do from here? So I know that when measuring the direction or the angle of a vector, I must measure from the positive x-axis until I reach that vector. So my positive x-axis starts from here, so I measure until I reach this vector. So this is where vector A is. So meaning this here in red is what is my angle for what vector A. So how do I get that? I've been given 25 there. So when I subtract 180, because I know it is almost making a semicircle. So from when I subtract 180 degrees minus 25 there, since I have it at 25 degrees there, this will be equal to 155. I will get 155 degrees. So after getting this, that is the angle where my was is, or the direction of the vector A. So how do I continue from there? I must find the components of the vector A. So I will find the x component using the formula. So the x component is found using, so A x to represent x component must be equal to what does the or what must this be equal to? So must be equal to the magnitude of the vector. So the magnitude from the question, we have that it is 30 meters. So the magnitude is 30. Then since we're dealing with x, meaning we have to deal with what? Cosine. So cos 155 degrees. So when I punch that into my calculator, when I say 30 cos 155, okay, I will get negative 27.189. So I will get that negative there. So that will be my x component. So I must then find the y component. I find the y component. So I'll say a, the subscript y must be equal to, what must this be equal to? So the magnitude, which is 30, then I have, since I'm dealing with the y, I'm dealing with sine the angle, which is 155 degrees. So this will be equal to, what will this be equal to? So when I punch in my calculator, I will have 12, okay, point 679. Okay, Let me try to write it down here to make it more visible. So I will have 12.679 to 3 decimal places there. So right, so that is my y component. Now I must find the x component of the vector b and the y component of the vector b. So I must measure my angle again to reach the vector b. So I have my vector b here situated there, and it has a magnitude of 20 meters. So from the positive x-axis here to my vector b, it rounds there, almost making a 360. So I know that that will be 360 then, since it sits in the fourth quadrant. So it's 360 minus 20 degrees. Then I will have that equal to 340 degrees. Okay, from there, what do I do next? I find the x component. So b subscript x is going to be equal to 20 being my magnitude cos 340. So when I get this and put this into my calculator, and I punch this into my calculator, I have 20 cos 340. So what do I get? I get 18.793. So 794, I round off there. 794 to 3 decimal places. Then I will put the same here, the y component for this 20 sine 340. So what do I get when I plug in that? So when I say 20 sine 340, I get negative 6.40. So that's what I get. So I have here negative 27.189 as my ax, which is the x component of the vector a, and I have here my 18.794, which is the x component for the vector b. So now what are we doing here? We are adding. So because we are adding here, we will add the two to get the resultant vectors, both for the x components and the y components. So Rx in short is what we are talking of, resultant for the x components. So we are adding. So for vector a, we have this here, negative 27, negative 27.189. Then I'm adding this plus my 18.794. So when I add that, what do I get? So negative 27.189 plus 18.794. What do I get? I get negative, so that is going to be equal to negative 8.395. Okay, so that is my resultant in the x. So now how do I find the next here? I must find for y. So ry subscript there. So I am still what, adding. So I will add 12.679. I will add that minus, or because when I add, since I have a negative sign here for b, negative 6.840, multiplying the negative by the positive, I still get negative, and I will have 6.840. So there, what will I get next? So when I add these two, what I am getting for the y is going to be equal to 5.8 5.839. Okay, so that is the resultant for my y. Now I must find the total. How am I going to find the resultant when I add the two? What will I actually be getting? What will be the magnitude of my vector? So I will use the formula RT is gonna be equal to root of Rx squared plus Ry squared, like that. So what do I do next from here? So from here I just plug in my values. So what are my values? Okay, so my values are, so r of x squared, that is, I square the negative 8.39, okay, negative 8.395 squared, plus, for my y, what is for my y? My y is 5.8339, then I square that there. Okay, so I square this, and when I square this and just plug this into my calculator, I will get, so round it off to two decimal places, it will be equal to 10.23 10.23 meters. So that is the magnitude. So that is the magnitude. Okay, we found the magnitude. Now we must find the direction. So I must erase what's here. So hope you've written the values. Okay, keeping the values in mind. We'll use the values as we go on. So now, how do we find the direction? So to find the direction, what we will use is the formula theta is equal to tan inverse of my y component divided by the x component. In this case, we are talking about the resultant, which we were finding. So tan inverse of what is my y. So my y is 5.839. Then I divide by negative what, 8.395. Okay, can plug this into my calculator. What do I get? So when I say tan inverse of 5.839 divided by negative 8.395, okay, so I get negative, so I get negative 3, I get negative 30 34.819, like that. So when I look at the points that I have, so I have, if I was to sketch this on an x on a x or y plane, I will have that. So okay, here I have my x or y plane just to demonstrate what we're going to do with that answer or that angle we've gotten there. So when I move my x, my x is negative 8.39, so I must move to the left. So I must move to the left up to that point. So when I move here, let me use a different color. So I move to the left like this. So then I have another value of what, of y, which is 5.83, which is in the what, in the positive direction. So I'm moving up, okay, like that. So that's how it is. So from there where I've ended, how do I get my resultant? I move from the origin where I started, until I connect to that angle there. So that is my vector. So this vector is what we found to be 10.23. So from there, then my angle, I know that I measure from the positive x-axis, which is here, till I reach my vector, which is there. So here, this is going to be my what? My angle. It's at open to that angle. Now, the angle which I've found is, or the angle which I've found there, negative 34.819, is this one here, this one. So how do I get that one? So I just subtract. Now I see that it's a semicircle, so I must subtract, or in this case I will add here. I will add 180 degrees. Yeah, add 180 degrees, and I will get 145 degrees to be my angle there. My angle, yes, my angle there. So that is my angle. Now, how do I proceed with the questions? So if we go back, the second part B, says find the difference. Now we're finding the difference. Take note, we're finding the difference. So if we're finding the difference, how do we do that? So it is easy, nothing to worry about, and no much work to do, because you have done most of the work up to this point. So I will write down I'll write the x and y components here. So the x components that we had found were negative 27.189. Then for B, the B component, the component is 18.794. Then what is for y in the A vector? That is 12.679. Then what is for y? For B, that is negative 6.840. So these are the components that we found. So now we are told find the difference. So we are told to find A minus B. So to find that, it is super easy. How do we do that? So we see that this is the same as writing A plus then minus B. So the negative there multiplies with the vector what? B, which implies when we are working out this, all components here of vector B must be multiplied by a negative. So for A it will remain the same, but for B it will be multiplying with what? With a negative. So how do we work out this? So when it comes to finding the resultant of x, so what do we do? Since we are adding here, we are adding a x, so we'll add using this formula here, plus, so minus bx, there will multiply what? A negative. And this here is going to give us negative 27.189 plus, then I have that minus, which is multiplying there, then that will be 18.794. Then I close there. So from here I know positive times negative gives me a negative, and I have negative, negative, negative plus negative. You just add there and keep the sign of the negatives. So when I add the two there, negative 27.189 minus 18.794, I will get 45.983. I will get 45. Let me just check that again with my calculator here. Okay, when I add that, I am getting exactly that, negative 45.83. So now I do the same to find the resultant for what? For y. So I'll say resultant for y here is going to be a y plus minus by. So from here, what do I do? So I have my a y. It's not changing there in this question, in this part of the question. It's not changing. So it will be that. Then I have that my by is negative and I have a negative there. So it will be negative by negative. Negative by negative. So that will give me a positive. So that will be positive. Then I'll write up what remains, which is 6.840. So when I add this two, what am I getting? So 12.679 plus 6.840, then I get 19.519. Okay, so I have my resultant x component and resultant y component. So I will use exactly that in order to find my final answer. So I will say that the resultant total. So I will plug that since we already know the formula. So I will say negative 4 point. Okay, this here is supposed to be 5. So negative 45.983. Negative. So negative 45 point 983. Okay, so this here is gonna be squared. So I square this part here plus. Then what did I get on the other side there? I got 19.519. Then I square 0.519. Then I square that there. So this square root must go all the way up to there. So I do that and I evaluate that on my calculator. I am getting 49.95 49.95 meters. So that would be what my resultant, or that is the magnitude which we are looking for. How do we then get uh, how do we then get the direction? How do we then get that direction? So how we get the direction is, so from where we ended here, we use the formula again. So we said the formula to get the direction will be theta. So tan inverse of the x component. So what is the x component that which we found? So we found the x, so the y component should be what on top. So we have the y divided by the x. So the y is 19.519, like that, divided by negative 45.983. So I plug that into my calculator and see what I get So negative at 519, then divided by negative, okay, negative 45.983, like that. Alright, so I will get, this is going to be equal to negative 23, just rounding it off to 0. Negative 23.00 is what I get. So now, from what I have gotten, how do I know my angle? So where my angle will be situated. So I will sketch that, make a rough sketch again. So my y, my x here. So just to identify the quadrant in which it lies. So I first go to the negative. So it's telling me first going to the what? To the negative. So x, first going to the negative. So when you go to the negative, it's this way. So you move this way, negative 45 point something times. Then you go up because it's positive. So you move negative, then you go up. Why? Y is positive, so you go up in the positive direction there. then you move from center to connect there. So this here is what is my 49.95, and it's reasonable. It's the hypotenuse. You see that it is the longest side from these other two sides. So there, then I've gotten my angle to be, so my angle negative what, negative 23 is this one here, negative 23. So meaning the angle that I'm looking for, since I measure from the positive to till I reach that vector, it's here. So I just subtract, or I add, in this case I'll add negative 23.00 plus 180. So what do I get? I add 180 and I will get the angle 150. So I will round off and that will be 57 degrees there. That is my answer for that one. Okay, so now we move on to do the last part. So in the last part we have that we are dealing with uh, b plus, so b, okay, let me erase this, or let me use the following board. Okay, so we have that we are doing b minus a, which is just the same as writing b plus minus a, meaning this time we are multiplying the negative to the components of a when finding. So we say the resultant of x is going to be bx plus minus ax. Then I close that. So when I do that, what is my bx? So I get that to be 18.794. Then what is my ax? So my ax is negative. It's negative 27. So from what we found, so let me just write this again. It's positive, then negative, then I'm multiplying by another negative 27.189 from what we found previously. So continue here. When we expand positive, negative times negative, it's going to give us a positive, and we'll just add. So this will become the just positive 45,983. So what changes in here is what is the direction. Everything will be the same, so we just change the direction. So having written this here, we will have that when it comes to resultant of y, so doing the same thing, we have by plus minus ay. Then I will get my by to be negative. It is negative 6.840. Then my y, I will multiply this negative by 12 there, 12 point what, then I'll get negative 12.679. Then adding this, I get my answer to be negative 19.519 is what I get. So this is my y and this is my x. So as you can see, only the signs were changed. In this case, only the signs changed. So how do I get my theta? So my theta will be the same, because when I say that tan inverse of those x and y, so the y component here is the same. So I get 19.519 divided by 45.983. Okay, Punching that into my calculator, I still get negative 23.00. So now what we're interested here in is the direction. So how do we get the direction? So how we get the direction is we are going to make a sketch again, so of how we get our direction. So direction be gotten in this manner. So here's my sketch. Then I say it is telling me I must move to the positive right. So to the right it's positive 45.983. So I move there. Then when I move there, and what is my y? My y points to negative, so I have to move down. So negative is gonna be there. Then from there, I move from the positive. I connect to that what? To that last arrow here. Okay, so I'll connect there. So this here is what we found to be 49.95. Now the angle that we got, so the negative 23 is this here inside. So how do we get the final one? So we move from the positive x-axis till we reach that vector. So when we move from here till we reach the vector, this vector here, so we see we're almost making a circle. So we'll say 360 degrees, since we know that the full resolution there is 360. Then I will subtract, or in this case I am adding, because my angle is already negative, so negative 3.00. So it's an angle, it will just be 0. You can, yeah, 3 point, or just 23 degrees is going to be the same thing. So here when you evaluate that, you will get an angle or direction of 337 degrees. So that is your direction. So you found your magnitude and you found your direction. So that is how we answer those 3 questions. Thank you for watching this video. Remember to hit the subscribe button.